So everyone has shared their why. And I listened to many of the whys that was being shared here. And everybody, it was like a fingerprint. Nobody had the exact same reason why. But here's the common denominator. Everybody has something that why should be connected to that makes it more powerful. And the presenter was saying something when he heard Kim share hers. He was talking about the fact of, is your why enough? Is the fact that you have a why, is that good enough to translate or to convert into productivity? And at the end of the day, that's what this next exercise is. So everybody has shared their why. And somebody might be saying, well, Dwight, what is your why? What is your compelling reason? What is your at the gut level, what is it that really propels you to continue to work this business? And I tell people all the time, some of you know and some of you don't. Certainly some of my immediate team is here. Come on, give it up, y'all. All right. And so they know my why. And they've heard me express it many times. But my why is my wife, Sadie. And we've been married for 43 years.
All right.
Yes. Married her when I was 19 years old. And she clearly is one of the compelling reasons why I want to make this happen for her. And the thing about it was, when we got married at age 19, I was 19, she was 18, and we started off our life together, had hopes and had dreams, had aspirations. So I was in the military, I was in the Navy, spent our first year in Hawaii. What a place to spend your first year of being married. Beautiful. I mean, and when I got out of the Navy, I started selling real estate. We had 2 beautiful children. I was making a lot of money. It was back in the middle 1970s, got my real estate license in 1975. And if you had asked us where we were headed with our beautiful 4-bedroom, 3-bath home, owned 4 cars, 2 of which were Mercedes-Benz. And if you'd asked me where we were headed, I would have clearly said that I was on my way to the top. I was a licensed real estate broker, owned a real estate firm. We were really on the move. And there was a song out during that time by a group called McFadden and Whitehead, and we play it sometimes. It was called Ain't No Stopping Us Now. Yeah. Hey, we're on the move, and we was all in the disco with our legions. Hey, ain't no stopping us now. So it seemed like the good times would never end. And then one day I was standing in the kitchen of a friend's house, and her friend came in, and he started using drugs. And he was standing there, and he took out this contraption, he poured this powder onto these screens, and he took in a big chest full of smoke, and he blew it out. And I remember watching that, and I was mesmerized. And I told him, I said, you know what, I'd like to try that just once. I stood there, I took in that chest full of cocaine, blew the smoke out, and in a spirit of invincibility, I said to myself, I can handle this drug. Because I'd had friends that had messed up their lives behind smoking cocaine. But ladies and gentlemen, Warren Buffett said something very profound. He said, the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. And truer words were never spoken, because before that year ended, I was hopelessly addicted to cocaine. Every waking minute of my life was consumed on how I was going to get and use this drug. And it wasn't long before the toothpick castle that my wife and I had built began to crumble room by room. First to go was home sweet home. We lost the house. Then the cars were gone. Then I had to shut down the real estate office. And then in 1981, I did the unthinkable. And I walked out on my wife and 2 beautiful children. Walked out on this woman that did everything she could to make our marriage work. And I began to pursue my new love, this drug, this cocaine that had overtaken every area of my life. even to the point of walking and leaving my family, moving 500 miles up the coast of California, landing on the streets of Oakland, California, using and selling drugs, going in and out of crack houses, OD'd on 3 times and almost lost my life. In other words, the person that I was, I had literally, as my friend said, drugs don't make you somebody, they'll make you somebody else. Wow. And I had literally become someone else on those streets of Oakland. End up going to jail on 7 different occasions. And I remember one of the lowest points that I can think back on was, it was about in 1983, and I had been up for about 4 days. I was in this crack house, and the electricity was off, the plumbing wasn't working. And I remember waking up after that 4-day binge with my head laying on the floor in a nasty, filthy shag carpet. And I opened up my eyes, and in a moment of clarity, I thought about how far down I had fallen. Only a few years earlier, I was on my way to the top. You couldn't have told me I wasn't going to be a millionaire by age 30 or 35. But now, as a result of one moment of indiscretion and a bad decision, now I'm laying here on this nasty, filthy shag carpet. Homeless, addicted, sick in my body. And I remember getting up off of that floor, walking out to the front door, and instead of hollering out to somebody, "Help me, I need a rehab center," the only thing was on my mind was, where could I get just one more hit? Wow. Because the chains of habit were still wrapped tight around my neck. And no matter how much I struggled, I could not get free. So I ended up going to jail, getting out of jail. And after a couple of weeks, talked to my sister in Southern California. By this time, I'd been gone away from my wife and children for 5.5 years. Wow. She should have divorced me. For whatever reason, she didn't do it. So I was talking to my sister, and I said, "Margaret," I said, "I'm so tired of using these drugs, and I need to be free." She said, "Dwight, if we get you a ticket to come down to Southern California," she said, would you get on that airplane? Because before they sent money, I took the money and used it for drugs. The next morning, I got on that airplane in Oakland, California, and got off at Ontario International Airport in the old terminal. And ladies and gentlemen, when I got off of that plane, all I had left were the clothes I was wearing on my back. I had lost everything. Standing at that curbside, filled with guilt, with shame, with regret, and I still had that addiction. And I was wondering, who's going to be here for me? Because the truth was, I'd burned every significant bridge, tore down every significant relationship. Nobody owed me anything. And I remember standing there on that curbside. And I looked, and there, coming around this corner, an old Chevy Nova car, was my wife.
Oh my God.
And when she should have came around that corner and literally done a drive-by, she didn't do a drive-by. Because when she could have chosen to hate, she chose love. And when she could have chosen revenge, she chose to forgive. And it's been said that forgiveness is like the sweet fragrance that a rose leaves on the foot that crushed it. And I had crushed my rose. I had hurt her as bad as you could hurt a woman. But I had broken her heart. But I had not broken her love. She pulled around there. I got in that car. I leaned over and kissed her like I'd been on a 3-day business trip. "Hi, honey, how are the kids?" And she should have said, "Excuse me? If you had been here, you'd know." But that's not the kind of woman Sadie is. She didn't say anything. We rode away from that airport. We began a long, incredible road to restoration. I woke up the next morning in her house, a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 80 or 90-year-old home. But there was more love in that little small masonry house than there was in that big, pretty 4-bedroom, 3-bath home. And the next morning I woke up, my wife Sadie gave me breakfast in bed. She set that plate down, absolutely. And I couldn't even enjoy it because of the guilt and the shame that I was dealing with. And so my daughter, who was 2 years old when I left her, now she's almost 8 years old. She never had a chance to connect with her father. She only heard about this man that was her father that had made some really bad choices. She ran into that room. And I said, baby, why are you running? She looked at me, she said, Daddy, I just wanted to make sure that you were still here.
Oh my God.
I said, baby, Daddy ain't going nowhere. I gave her a big hug, and she just stuck to me like glue from that moment on. But my son was 5 when I left him. He had a chance to connect with his dad. He had a chance to bond, to go places, to the football games and the basketball games and all of that other kind of stuff. And I don't have to tell you this, he didn't come running in the room saying, Daddy, I just wanted to make sure you were still here. Because my son was angry. And he had a right to be angry because he didn't deserve the tear that took place in our life. And it took years for us to rebond ourselves together. So what I'm trying to say to you is that my wife, Sadie, when I came back home, instead of putting her finger in my face and telling me, how could you, and why did you, and coming up with all kind of questions and things that I didn't really have an answer for, she just treated me with forgiveness and tough love. She set boundaries. I couldn't come in the house with drugs. I couldn't come in that house using profanity because they weren't used to that kind of thing. And I struggled with that addiction for another 2.5 months until the 3rd Friday in June. I'd been up all day smoking with a friend, came up to the end of no drugs. I was begging my little nephew for 1 hit of crack, and one thing happened. He said, no, Uncle, you can't have none. You don't need any more. And I remember leaning over and just hunching over and begging. I said, please, just give me 1 hit. And he reluctantly gave me that hit of crack. And I took that hit, but as I was begging him, it was like I could see myself for how low I had become over this little piece of crack cocaine. He gave me that hit, I took it, I blew the smoke out, but then something began to happen in my head. I walked across the street to my sister's house, collapsed on her floor, and in a moment of total and complete surrender, I cried out to the only God that could deliver me. I rolled around on that floor, and I said, Lord, you gotta set me free. I can't take this anymore. And I was crying, and my nieces were stepping over Uncle Dwight. But what they don't know is that I was doing business with God. I was asking him to set me free. And here's what I know. I don't remember how long I was on that floor, but when I got up, I had a sense that the chains of habit had been broken. And ladies and gentlemen, from that night until this very moment, I've been totally and completely drug-free, and to God be the glory. Hallelujah. Totally to God. Thank you, Lord. He's worthy to be praised. My wife and I were reunited, and we've been back together now for 29 years and married for 43 years. So when I tell you that my wife is my why, that's the story behind the why. And all of you have a story behind your why, especially if it's a person. And all we get to hear is, this is my why, or that is my why. But all of us have a compelling story and a reason why we wrote that down on our paper, why we stood up and shared. That's why my why is. So I ride around sometimes, and I'm like everybody else. Sometimes your why You know, sometimes you feel like a nut and sometimes you don't. Got to break it up in here. Sometimes you feel 5 links, and guess what? Sometimes you don't. But here's what I know. That in those moments, in those gaps where I'm not feeling it, so I ain't gonna talk to nobody, I'm not working it, I'm thinking all this stuff, well, maybe I should do this or maybe I should do that. At some point, your why distracts you from that mindset. Your why disputes and puts an argument up for why you need to return and get back to the grind Tamara talked about. At some point, you have this inspiration from the inside when you realize and remember why it is that you do what you do. And at the end of the day, that will be your rod, that will be your staff to comfort you when it's looking like it ain't gonna happen for you. When it's looking like everybody you talk to, it seems like they don't want to hear nothing about what you have to say. But here's what they don't know. They don't know why you're showing up in front of them. They don't have a clue. So if you know in your heart of hearts what it is that drives you, at the end of the day, that's all that's gonna matter. Give yourselves a round of applause for your God.